president or, frustratingly, even taken the final leap of putting a label on what the facts added up to. Instead, our report set out numerous episodes that provided clear evidence against the president. However, we were forbidden from indicting him for these crimes, as we were employees of the Department of Justice and bound to follow an internal department policy that no president could be indicted while in office, whether we agreed with that rule or not. Given this idiosyncratic circumstance, Mueller had decided it would be unfair to say that we found the president had committed a crime, as Trump would not be able to challenge our conclusion in court, at least until he left office. Thus, our report laid out the proof of his criminal conduct in detail, but did not give our legal assessment of it. We never said outright that he'd committed a crime. Instead, we had left it to Congress to make its own assessment of our evidence, or to another prosecutor in the future, who would be free to indict the president once he'd left office. We were well aware that this approach would read awkwardly and, frankly, as a transparent attempt to hide our true thoughts. Anyone reading the report as a whole would see that when the evidence did not rise to such a level, we had explicitly said so, including when the conduct was that of the president. By contrast, our silence on whether Trump had obstructed justice, whether the President of the United States had broken the law, would be deafening. When he was not guilty of certain crimes, we said so, and when he was, we were silent. But we had found no other way of dealing with Mueller's decision to abide by the principle of protecting anyone who could not have his or her day in court. I spent most of the 5-hour drive to Washington awaiting news of Barr's announcement on the radio. I was listening on my iPhone as the radio in my car had been on the fritz ever since a mechanic had jump-started my battery improperly around the time I joined the special counsel's office, and I'd never found a moment to get it fixed. For hours, there was only endless blather and speculation on air, filling the time. But late that afternoon, as I drove along the New Jersey Turnpike, that changed. There was real news to report. My ears perked up. The CNN announcers reported that they had their hands on a 4-page letter from the Attorney General summarizing the conclusions of our report. This immediately struck me as odd. We knew that only diehards would read the entire report, which was written by lawyers and filled with dense legalese. So we had prepared summaries of our findings, highlighting key conclusions and evidence in both volumes of the report. When Barr announced he would be issuing something public shortly after receiving our report, I had assumed it would be these summaries. That would be the easiest way to get information to the public quickly, as Barr professed he wanted to do, and would not carry any risk of skewing one way or the other what the special counsel had determined. After all, the whole point of appointing a special counsel was to ensure an investigation of the president would be conducted independently, rather than led by the Attorney General, a presidentially appointed cabinet member who might, therefore, be beholden to the subject of the probe. But from what I was now hearing, Barr had clearly not taken this approach, as our summaries were much longer than 4 pages. The voices on the radio then began breathlessly announcing key takeaways from Barr's letter. Mueller had concluded that the Russians had meddled in the 2016 presidential election. Mueller had concluded that there was no evidence of collusion. Mueller had not found that the president obstructed justice, but neither did he find that the president had not obstructed justice. Instead, they explained, the letter claimed that the special counsel had left the obstruction determination to the Attorney General, and that Barr, along with his deputy, Rod Rosenstein, had concluded that there'd been no obstruction by the president. That was that. Trump was cleared. I stiffened up behind the wheel. Something was very wrong. That was not, in fact, what our report said. I figured that in its initial quick reading of the letter, CNN had screwed up. I kept listening, expecting clarifications, but none came. How could Barr and Rosenstein have weighed in at all? The whole reason Mueller had been appointed by Rosenstein was because the Department of Justice had determined that it could not objectively investigate the president, a classic fox guarding the henhouse issue. That Barr had recently replaced Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General did not change that legal issue one whit. And how could Rosenstein now do an